Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
The trucking industry is crazy right now, and being a broker can be stressful. Managing your invoices, billing, collecting, carrier base, and cash flow can feel like an impossible task. But I can tell you, OTR Solutions has figured out the impossible. They eliminate cash flow problems for carrier payments and ensure margin funding in just 24 hours with broker invoice factoring. OTR Solutions takes care of billing and collection processes with your shippers. And with lightning quick and accurate invoicing, your customers will never need another broker to handle their freight needs. Kick back, relax, and let OTR take care of your brokerage. If you want to know more, and I hope you do, check them out at otrsolutions.com/freight-caviar to see what they can do for your business. Or give them a call. They love to talk to brokers at 770-882-0124. We've partnered with Ascend TMS, the world's most popular and top-rated transportation management system. It's the ultimate tool for all your freight needs. You can use our referral code RA-FreightCaviar to receive 3 months of Ascend TMS for free. It only takes 20 seconds to sign up and no credit card is required. You can click the link below to learn more.
Hi guys, today we have a podcast. We have a special guest on today. We have Kenneth Lund. Kenny, if you could explain a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background and how you got started in the logistics, I guess.
Sure. And thanks for having me here. It's great to talk to you today. So I'm Allen Lund Company. We go back to 1976. My dad, Allen, started the company. He worked for the largest logistics company now, C.H. Robinson, and really thought he'd going to retire with them. He loved the company. And at that time, they were probably 95% produce sales or more, and about and a small percentage of logistics. And he was the logistics side. He was the traffic department in LA, and he asked for a raise, and they decided not to give him one. And he had his 6th kid on the way. So he he said in one of his interviews that he started the company to feed the kids, and he went on his own, and his mom cried for a week. And he finally realized she wasn't worried about him. She was worried about her kids or the grandkids. And so he told her, he said, look, if I book 4 loads a week, I know the kids will eat. And she stopped crying. And the first month, he booked over 100 loads. He'd actually run a small company. A guy was doing 25 loads a month. That guy said, hey, I'll stay on and teach you this business. And the first month, he quadrupled the business. And the guy said, I'll see you later. You don't need me. And I guess the rest is history.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And so I've heard him say a couple of times, I heard him say, he's past five years now, but his lessons still linger on, of course. And but I think he paid more in taxes that first year than he was making. So it was a good choice, and his mom's was very proud of him, and the kids always ate. And one of 6.
And I'm sure C.H. Robinson regretted, not giving him a raise after that.
I think there was a non-compete, and I think for a while they called it the Allen Lund agreement. At that time, a few people left the company we had known, and it was unfortunate for them. But he was always spoke highly of C.H. Robinson. He really didn't speak ill of them. And actually, he took. Or he really liked their model of what they were doing. So he improved that, I think, with Allen Lund Company, but he learned a lot there.
So, Kenny, how old were you in 1976?
Oh, I was 12.
12, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I kind of grew up in it because, we were one of the few families at that time that had 2 phones at the house. And you had to answer the phone properly. Lund residence, this is Kenny, how can I help you? I think from age 6. So we always were
Is that just
part of it?
Is that just because somebody like a different broker or a carrier or a shipper could be calling? That's why you guys had to answer that way or had 2 phone?
Yeah, no, that's why. And Dad always wanted you to answer the phone properly. And a lot of truck drivers at night, he was doing almost entirely produce, which was loading
Yeah.
24/7. And so, all hours of the day, truckers were calling and for advances or for, instructions, or lost their, not, their pickup number. And so
Yeah.
we were always talking to them. We also had in our family car a CB radio. Not many
Oh wow.
families had that. And story I always tell is, invariably one of the drivers would have a swear word, and my dad would get on that CB radio and he'd say, "Can you imagine airline pilots speaking that way?" He says, "Now clean it up. You can be more professional." And
Oh
Love
wow.
it. Old
he was
school.
always expecting people to act more professionally within the company, but also truck drivers and
Yeah.
shippers.
I like that.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, that's
how
we need more people like that now, because all you hear is like all this junk over CB radios. When you go to a truck stop and you listen to the CB radio, that's why I think a lot of people don't even use CB radios, because it's all just trolling on there. Everybody's just trolling each other. So yeah,
Yeah,
uh
I had a CB radio in my car, my first car, and I tried to do that as well. But I love that line is, "Hey, can you imagine an airline pilot speaking that
oh,
way?"
definitely.
It's a great line.
So, Kenny, in 1976, the industry was completely different. The Motor Carrier Act, I think, was passed in 1980 or 1978, right? So, how was the industry leading up to those years before?
Yeah, so that's was a tremendous blessing for us because before deregulation, which actually started under the Carter and then it was continued under the Reagan administration. But we could only handle exempt items. So our roots are in fresh produce, and we did thousands of loads of cotton as well out of California. So it was great to have our roots in produce. That's always been the number one type of commodity that we've handled. It's 40% still of the loads that we do, and 60% of what we do is some type of food item, fresh produce or proteins
Oh,
or beverages a lot now. So it was great to have our roots in that. Some companies that started after us, never really had to get, you had to be into produce. And I think that's some of the most difficult, most challenging, and also most rewarding and most fun items to manage as a 3PL.
they're definitely difficult. I've done some produce, and we had a contract, a potato contract, and it fell apart so quickly because, I mean, trailers were getting rejected left and right at pickup. Also at delivery, the product was getting rejected. There's so many variables that go into it, and at the same time, a lot of the loads were just paying by the weight. So the drivers selling that load on a load board to drivers is always just a hassle. You tend to have someone that's contracted and understands the produce industry in order to service that properly.
Yeah, and early on, I handled. There was just a couple of us handling produce in the LA office, and then there were three brokers handling dry freight. My brother was in charge of that, and it get I'd get a claim, on a almost daily basis, a couple cases missing or a temperature claim or something like that. I teased my brother because he had a truckload of cotton literally roll down a mountain side,
oh
and they
wow.
salvaged the entire load. There was no claim. And like, hey, baled cotton's hard to hurt.
Yeah.
But it was
Wow.
not the best paying freight, but it was great to get a lot of our southeastern truckers back to their companies, because at that time all that cotton was going back into the southeast to the textile mills, which is virtually gone now. But
Okay.
back in the day, that's where all the California cotton went.
Fascinating.
So yeah, so did you get started basically as soon as you turned 18? Did you start working from the office or from the brokerage side, or did you kind of go into different avenues, or did you start right with your father and go start booking loads?
Yeah, so before I guess or against child labor laws, we used to go in as kids and on Saturdays and had to fix up the office and everything as that 12 year
Yeah.
old. Great times. Used to go in and get our haircut there, go into the Mateo Street Cafe or Vickman's and have breakfast with Dad, and then go in and work. But after college, I took 3 years and I taught in high school and coached baseball. And I was running a summer camp in the summer, so it kind of fit nicely with teaching. And then in 1989, with all that money piling up from teaching, that got, what do you do with all that money? And so I
Right.
decided to join the company. And I remember coming into Dad's office and he said, I'm going to give you every lousy job I can think of here because you're going to have to earn everything. Otherwise, people won't respect you. And I've done everything from fix the elevators to run cables in the attics to painting to emptying the trash cans. And that has been a blessing as well. That was a great thing that my dad did is, not only did we not get special treatment, we got every lousy job he could give us.
That's kind of how it is with working with family. I've noticed that too. When my brother started a trucking company and I was working for him, I feel like we were the ones that were always doing pickups for all the other drivers or doing stuff that other drivers were just like showing up and like, oh yeah, let's do it, But then if you're family, I feel like people are like, oh yeah, you can do that. He won't complain. He will do it. It's not a big deal. So yeah, it's kind of
a family business is a multiplier. It makes the good things great. I mean, there's nothing better, than that, than working with family. But there's also a different tension with family, and sometimes things are said that you wouldn't say to I guess normal employees. And so it can make the bad times, it can make, it can enhance that too. But fortunately, we've had a very good run, and I think we have a very good understanding. And now working with both my brothers and brother-in-laws and nephew, we all have a good understanding of what each person's skills are, and then trying to bring those out with the company in a way that helps the company.
So how big is Allen Lund right now? Like, how many offices do you guys have? How many employees do you guys have?
Well, when I started in 1989, we were 32 employees and I think 5 offices. And I'm happy to say we're over 700 employees now.
Oh, wow.
37 offices. We just opened up in Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're now international officially. Wow. And have grown to about $1.5 billion in total sales.
That's unbelievable.
May shrink back a little bit now with the freight rates down, but we're going to increase the numbers of loads in our footprint.
So you're doing almost $2 million of revenue per employee. That's remarkable. If that's my numbers are right, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's in some brokerages that just do dry freight, they're not getting the higher value, because we're doing so much produce, and you do a produce load from San Francisco to Boston, that's going to be quite a high ticket, compared to some of these dry freight. So yeah, that number's probably larger than most, but that's a lot driven with the produce.
I mean, I know that mostly brokers try to aim for that 1 employee to 1 million in revenue. So you essentially doubled that, which is definitely remarkable. Do you think that having that early start and like before deregulation has helped you? Because I'm guessing a lot of these customers have been your customers for a long time. Did that early start kind of propel you and like give you that advantage to being in that position right now? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And because we were, not regulated, that industry has to regulate itself. The produce, had the blue book and the red book, and if your reputation in there was everything. But really, your reputation in dealing with drivers, dealing with shippers, was everything even without that. But I think we were the youngest companies to get a 4-star and a 4X rating in those books, which meant that people would work with you. And we had very few, claims and stuff that were significant with the produce companies, or them ripping you off. I mean, there's the normal claims, but then there's, companies disappearing on you. And if you followed those books that were really industry books, they had nothing to do with the government, you did pretty well. So you learned that your reputation is everything. And Dad, certainly, embodied that. And he was the chairman at what then TBCA, Truck Brokers Conference of America, and he moved them. He was part of the group that moved them to Washington, D.C. and changed the name to TIA, Transportation Intermediaries Association. And one of the things they insisted on was an ethics pledge. And to this day, to be a member, you have to sign and acknowledge that ethics pledge every year to be a part of that association. So he always tried to raise the standards of the entire industry.
I like
That's
that.
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that goes back to that early, unregulated times. Some people, I even hear it now with the truckers, some of them want, there to be regulated and to be set rates. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you do not want that. The government is so inefficient, and you want to bring that in.
So what are the pros and cons of that? Because we do hear that a lot lately, where all the carriers, I hear this all the time too, that people are messaging me on my social media. They're like, hey, brokers should be regulated, there should be set, we should see the whatever the difference is. Why shouldn't we do that? Why shouldn't it be regulated?
Yeah, and I should clarify too. There certainly should be regulations on brokers, and there are. We have to have a $75,000 bond now, and I know some of the carriers would like that to be higher. I think that's kind of funny. $75,000 wouldn't go very far with a company like Allen Lund Company. There's you got to know who you're dealing with, and unfortunately, the FMCSA under the DOT is not really identifying the players correctly. There's some dispatch services now that are acting as brokers, and they're not licensed as brokers. And so we're working on that with TIA to try to identify that, and to be clear. And then the same thing with the carriers. Right now there's an epidemic, but it's always been there, of a double brokering. You give a load to a trucker and then they give it to somebody else and act as a broker, but they're still saying, I'm just a trucker. And so the carriers, the truckers, have to be careful what they're asking for, because you're asking regulations on a lot of truckers. And every major trucker has a brokerage division. And so I think it's really important, and I'd love to see some rules of engagement that say, who are you working with? And you have to identify yourself as either the broker, and you need to be licensed that way, or a carrier. And you can have both, but I want to know who I'm dealing with. And I think the carriers are, just the same. They want to know who they are dealing with, and what's your rating. The good thing about the internet is everybody can rate everybody and have a say. And we're as an industry working hard to weed out the bad actors.
Especially right now, I feel like there's so many scams and so many different things going on. Yeah, it's definitely crazy.
So, Kenny, I was at your panel at TIA, which was the one on Saturday, about theft and double brokering, cargo theft. I wanted to see, from your point of view, what has changed since you started in the industry in 1989, maybe even earlier, if you have some insights in like the cargo theft and the fraud that's currently prevalent.
Yeah, boy, in the early days, there was so little of that. People didn't even, imagine, doing some of the stuff that's going now. And a lot of that is enabled by the internet, and the internet didn't come around until the late 90s. And it really wasn't prevalent in the industry until the early aughts, and I remember all these all the transportation brokers, just like, we're going to eliminate travel agents. And I'm like, well, what we do is a lot different than a travel agent. It may seem similar, but with that, technology has come for the ability to do identity theft and to pretend to be somebody you're not. And it's also, that push on brokers to get loads, and you get sloppy and don't vet who you're working with. So there's a lot more ability for fraud. And unfortunately, unorganized crime has figured that out. And they're the ones that are accelerating this fraud, load theft, identity theft, double brokering, or not paying the carrier, like they should, or just disappearing, completely. And I think the technology has it's helped us be more efficient, but it's helped the bad people be more efficient as well.
What year did you start realizing that double brokers were like on the market?
Gosh, probably 2010,
Okay.
kind of felt that happen more. Bob, was that would be what you kind of think as a trucker? They were truckers.
So I've been in the trucking for like 9 years. Honestly, I've only started hearing about double brokers probably like 4 years ago, maybe
Mhm.
5 years ago. It was never, but so I was a driver, and then we started our own company like 3 years ago. So I never was on that side of the business because I just drove back then, and all I cared was about recording stuff that was going on in the industry, like the shippers and receivers, and just recording about my life as a truck driver. So, and now I'm actually getting to the side and just learning kind of all the backgrounds, of brokering, of double brokering, of all this stuff that I'm learning. So it's very interesting.
A lot of it is ongoing in California. Well, a lot of it, I guess, companies are set up in California, but
We're number one in load theft. There we go.
I
Go
saw
California.
that. Load theft, double brokering, a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I mean it's definitely a hot topic. And I'm also wondering, Kenny, like, so you entered in 1989 into Allen Lund. Your father made you do all these tasks all around the office. How has the trajectory, the growth been of Allen Lund ever since you joined? Because you had 32 employees in 1989. Now it's 700. When did you have these spurts of growth? When did you see it, and how did that look like? And like, what was your, I guess, like job and role behind that?
Yeah. So really, it takes a long time to learn the industry. It takes at least 2 years, before you can even quote a load in the produce side, on the refrigerated side, and that's where I was. And so that was learning. But then in the about 1995, I became the first IT employee, which was kind of interesting because I was doing both jobs and hooking up these newfangled computer things, actually dumb terminals. And so I'd travel around to the offices and I'd install the phone systems and these terminals. We had a few employees that said absolutely not, and of course they became the employees that would call and say, the computer's been down for 30 seconds. When's it going to be back up? At that time, it was mainframe and terminals. But the technology allowed us to connect all our offices. We actually helped a company develop what's called the G729 voice compression standard that became the voice over IP, where most of the calls originate or go over internet protocols now. So it was a really fun time to be in IT, but it was all about installing equipment. And then we wrote our own software. We've always written our own software because we've been computerized since 1982.
Oh, wow.
I even came with the company. We had a mainframe and wrote it in Business Basic, which is a language that came out in the 70s. So pretty cool times. We were the very first national account with DAT, which then was called Dial-A-Truck, because you called in your loads. And I remember programming the modem that called up using dip switches. Some of the older people on this podcast will know what a dip switch is, but changing the communications, and then our systems dialed up every 20 minutes to DAT and uploaded our available load. So it was really cool times. There was no email, I was even there before fax machines. And I remember giving a talk to TIA about how to convert an IBM laser printer into a fax receiver, so you didn't have that slimy curly paper that used to be printed on. And now we've seen the death of fax machines. I don't know anybody that faxes anymore.
I make memes about them now.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sorry, we're in 2023 now.
Yeah.
We don't use fax machines.
Yeah, and then people that use their life as email, appreciate this. I remember our MCI rep, who's come and gone. MCI rep gave me a device for email, and I'm like, email? That's funny. What's E stand for? And they're electronic mail. And she would send over our invoice for the phones over email as an attachment. And I had an email address. she had an email address, and a friend of mine who ran the computers at Kent State University had an email address. That's the only 3 people that I knew that had email addresses.
Wow.
And when they did attachments on it, I ran in my dad's office and said, "Dad, this is going to change everything." And he's like, "What?" I go, "No, you can attach a document and then print it." And he's like, "Oh, we got to get behind this." But we didn't have anybody to email to because nobody had it.
That's hilarious.
So, now I think I have 6 emails myself.
Yeah.
So times have changed. So that technology allowed us to grow. But it was always about the people. When we found the right people, we would open an office. People say, "Why aren't you in Salt Lake City, or why aren't you in Pennsylvania, or in Pittsburgh, or Philadelphia, or New Jersey?" And I'm like, "Well, we haven't found the right person there." We ended up opening in Savannah. We did not need to open in Savannah, but we had the right person, and that's where they wanted to be, and that's where we've grown a successful office. So it's always been about the people, and technology is a tool. Technology helps them do their business and build their relationship, but we really push our people to develop relationships with both the carriers and the shippers.
I like that.
Makes me a little upset when they say, "Oh, well, you deal with your customers and then you deal with your carriers." And I'm like, no, carriers are customers too. And the day you forget that is the day you're not a really as good a broker as you can be.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I feel like right now a lot of the companies are just going strictly, towards like technology and AI and all this stuff, where you don't even communicate with brokers, or it's just all computerized. And it's like, sometimes it's good. It definitely, like, this technology is helpful, but then sometimes when there's a little issue, then you're screwed for days. So
yeah, the ability to text drivers is fantastic, and to get information to them quickly is certainly helped by that. We have developed our own app that we've added some really good technology to. I think that's makes it a little bit unique. But everybody has an app. The poor drivers, they've got to have, if they work with 10 brokers, they got to have 10 apps, and then some shippers want this, and the macro points.
Exactly.
It's a pain, and we recognize that. And and I think that goes back to our roots with the produce. Is you're talking to drivers at 2 a.m. You better know them and trust them. Because a truckload of strawberries, they can't just get mad and abandoned on the road, and that goes bad for everybody. And I've had drivers over for dinner, and I have to tell this. We're a Catholic family, and somebody commented, said, "I like coming over to your house for dinner. You're the only family I ever known that prays for the truckers." And it's made me be better, and I let them in on the freeway. I used to curse them, if I felt on how to respect the truckers, and how important, getting product from point A to point B is certainly dependent a lot more on the truckers than it is on any brokers.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, Kenny, because you mentioned how you were kind of at the forefront of like the technological change when the email came through. What are your thoughts on like ChatGPT and AI, and how is Allen Lund right now changing their technology to incorporate AI? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think AI is a little new. It reminds me of when EDI was a thing. Like, oh, if you don't have EDI, you're going to be shut down. EDI standards became an oxymoron, and because there really aren't. There's just thousands of different standards that you cobble together, and then it was APIs, and now Chat GPT. And I must say, our IT department uses it a lot to write poems for somebody's birthday, and or anniversary, and it's really fun. But I don't see a ton of use for it right now. I know that's gonna change. And some of the elements of that will go in, but it's still just a tool. It's still about the people, and you need a human to make decisions. I think Uber Freight kind of learned that. They said they were going to eliminate the dispatcher, basically, or the broker, and they learned kind of the hard way that you really need people there. That technology, is great, but you need a relationship. And I think they were also surprised, and companies like that, not just them, but they were surprised at how good the technology is at a C.H. Robinson and a TQL and a Coyote and an Allen Lund and an Echo, that, hey, we were way ahead of where they were starting off at as a technology company. Sorry,
Right.
that's probably back in the teens.
Yeah, it makes sense though. Yeah, because I feel like back then nobody really thought of it as a like having technologies or anything like that, and now all the whole freight industry is like, oh, it's all about tech and everybody's getting into it. But it's like some of this was already implemented a while ago. So
yeah, no, for brokers, it's really about relationships on both sides of the transaction, and for carriers, it's good service and communication and getting the product from point A to point B in good order. And that's not technology. That's good service and professionalism.
but how do you compete? How do you compete right now when every other broker, like I keep talking, right? Like, because we try to book loads on a daily basis, and every time I hear is like, oh, well, we have to get under, because this broker is beating us on this load and we have to compete with them. And so everybody's like, I feel like underbidding each other. And then at the end of it, nobody's left with profit margins or money. So now everybody's just kind of running for the bare minimum. How do you even compete with that with these technologies companies where they come on and they take this like super cheap freight, and as long as they make their small little profit margin on each load but do a huge volume, they don't really care.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe it's a skewed look at the industry a little bit. I think being in the middle, we kind of see both sides of it, because we got shippers, a year and a half ago were screaming at us because rates were up, some lanes 100% from 2019, right?
Yeah.
And none of the truck drivers were complaining then. In fact, they were buying trucks and going that. And then the rates have come back, but they haven't come back to what they were in 2020 and 2019. It's still elevated from that, but boy, we've come back from the high. And so they feel it, but we're not seeing the bankruptcies in the trucking. We're not seeing, we're still seeing, I think, fair pass through for the trucking companies. And I think if a broker is looked at as they just supply a load, I think that's discounting what a broker can do for a carrier, because we're vetting the shippers. We pay almost every carrier faster than a shipper can pay you. Our average pay with shippers is 30 days, and our average pay with trucking companies is under 7, unless it's factored. We do let the factors prove their worth by funding that money for the carriers. And but if you just counted payments directly to trucking companies, it's well under 7 days, and that's for most of the larger brokers. Cool. Especially. So we're doing a lot more. We're smoothing out the information. I mean, I've had arguments and yell outs with people on the dock protecting the drivers, and we're giving them good freight to where they don't have to chase down to get collections on it. And a small carrier cannot call a Walmart or a Costco or a Home Depot and get loads. Right. You have to go through a 3PL, and we're betting millions of dollars when we go and bid those lanes with those companies. And sometimes we do better, and we're making a little bit more than the average on the brokerage. But I tell you right now, we're averaging well under the market average on our margins. When the rates drop, or hit bottom, we hurt as well. So right. I think there needs to be an understanding. Hey, we're in this together. We're not here to gouge truckers, but we are trying to run stuff as efficiently, as we can.
Yeah, it's all relationships at the end of the day.
It's all relationships, yeah.
Oh, so that's kind of your competitive edge, I would presume, like with other brokers, is that relationships?
Yeah, and our relationships certainly help. I'll give you one of my favorite stories I give our trainees is how important it is we were bidding with a big retailer, and this is like in 2002, and it was for 50,000 loads a year, so it was significant. And at that time, it would have 50% increase in the size of our company
wow.
with this one. And on their RFP, they had an interesting question that said, who of your competitors do you think can handle this much freight? And there were 18 companies that were involved in this RFP, and came down to us and another big broker, and we ended up getting it. And eventually I asked the guy, I said, hey, a couple of years later, after doing the business with them, and we were actually in-house with them for over 20 years. I asked him, hey, how come we got that? And he said two things. He said, one is Allen Lund of Allen Lund Company gave us his word. And the other was on that, we asked a question that said, who of your competitors could do this? He said, Allen Lund Company showed up on all 18.
Oh, wow.
On every one. He said, and he goes, and we had never heard of you, but all your competitors think the world of you. So that was, reputation even amongst the competitors is really important, and we work hard to protect that.
That's a great story.
Yeah,
I like that.
I'll give you another one. A trucker, he got ripped off by, I won't say who, but by a big broker for $150. So he wouldn't load with them anymore, and he ended up going to work for the largest beverage company, we'll say. And the RFP came up, and that broker came up, and he personally cut them out of millions of dollars of freight over that $150 that they would pay on an unloading. And then eventually he came to work for us, and he opened up our Dallas office. And because he said, Allen Lund Company never ripped me off. They always treated me fair. And when he was at that beverage company, he gave us a lot of freight. So, that was a well spent $150. If we ever, I always tell people, if you're arguing with a driver of $150, we're paying it. And he became one of our best managers. Because we treated him fairly as a driver, and it cost another broker millions.
Well, what's interesting is I went on the Transport Topics top 100 brokers, and me and my coworker, we compiled the whole list, and we cross-checked it with Glassdoor reviews, and I'm pretty sure Allen Lund was like #1 top-rated company to work for out of all the top 100 brokers. And I posted that on my LinkedIn a few months ago, and I got a lot of feedback from Allen Lund Company employees saying that that's 100% accurate. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah. And one of the things I want to add is, we feel that it's important to give back into your community, whether they can, and not, paying, an association where you're, going after customers and stuff. But for our 40th anniversary, which was 7 years ago, I think at the time we had 32 offices plus 8 support departments. So we had 40 divisions, 40 managers. So we challenged each one of them for our 40th anniversary to go do something in the community, and not just write a check. Go do something. Go work for Habitat for Humanity. Go walk for American Cancer Society. Go work for a women's shelter. And that year they took it to heart. And that was part of what we're doing. We did 71, what we ended up calling acts of kindness. And it was so successful, the managers themselves voted to do it again the next year. And then in our 43rd or 44th year, the last address from my dad to the managers over the phone, wasn't a dry eye in the place. He said, hey, you're the greatest employees in the world, and please keep the acts of kindness going. It's important that we give back. And so, we did 99 one year with them. So we're very involved, and it's important to give back. And then we find, hey, that's really good for employee morale. They want to work for a company that's got, a purpose and is honest. And so that's probably driven our growth more than just about anything else, and growth with quality people. It's kind of funny. We pay our employees if they bring in an employee or somebody to work for the company, if they recommend somebody and they become an employee, but they're picky about who they want to work with, so they won't recommend us to some of their friends.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I gotta run. This was a really great podcast. Kenny, thank you for coming on. I learned a lot, and we should actually do it again too.
We
'Cause
definitely have to do another one.
you
Yeah,
got a
this
lot
is
of stories that I feel like it would be interesting to hear, because you've been
yeah,
in it for so long that it's actually very interesting to hear that perspective, or
totally.
everything that happened.
I'd love to be on. You haven't even heard my Russia story, and that's a good one. So
Oh,
really look forward to doing
Yeah.
well, we should plan another one real soon. I really need to
Yeah.
hear that the Russia
Sounds
story.
good. I gotta go meet my insurance guys. So it was nice talking to you, and I'll see you guys later.
Good luck. Get out your checkbook, Bob.
I know, right?
Awesome.
Okay. Take
Take care,
Bye.
Kenny.
Take care. Be good.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.